The story begins with a young Swedish man named David, who is graduating from college and planning to move to Stockholm with his girlfriend, Nadia. Taking the opportunity to propose to her, David goes to the bathroom and calls a radio station. Everyone stops to listen to him in the diner as his speech is quite awkward, and the radio host becomes so impatient that he ends the call mid-sentence. But Nadia understands what he was about to ask. She is already in the men's bathroom when David exits the stall, and despite the poorly executed proposal, she joyfully accepts. However, their romance starts to wear thin as they move to the capital, and the couple begins to argue all the time. The situation worsens when Nadia discovers she is pregnant and decides not to tell David yet. She reveals the secret to a kind neighbor named Tomas, as he saw her feeling unwell. She thinks she is not capable of being a mother and fears that David will leave everything on her shoulders, but Tomas assures her that everything changes when the baby arrives. He tells her that having children is the best thing in the world, and his voice begins to tremble as he reveals that he has been a father. Nadia realizes that Tomas must have lived through something much worse than all her problems and apologizes, thanking him for his support. The following day, David surprises her with a breakfast tray and various notes scattered around the house, like a treasure hunt. The last note tells her to meet him at the car, where David is waiting with their dog, Boris. He then reveals the plan for a romantic trip to Bear Valley, a paradise where one can see the northern lights. Suspicious of this surprise, she asks how his work will be affected, and David explains that he pretended to be sick. He says that he may have the best job in the world, but it shouldn't cost him the best girl in the universe. Nadia laughs at her fiancé's eternal cheesiness, already in a good mood after the turn of events, and Boris is also excited about the trip. On the way, Nadia asks to stop when she feels nauseous, but she lies that it is just motion sickness from the road. After a few kilometers, the couple stops to refuel at a gas station. It is then that another car arrives, and out steps a pair of brutes, Jarmo and Roll. Roll takes a shine to Boris and starts talking about his own dogs. David sneaks a glance at their car and sees a dog much larger than his, with a not-so-friendly look. On top of that, Rolle treats Boris rather roughly, and his demeanor is quite inconvenient, as if he relies on his tough appearance to test others' limits. David becomes even more uncomfortable when he starts complimenting Nadia in a sleazy tone, but tries hard to remain calm. Then Boris begins pulling him, and he stops right behind Rolle's car, where he sees a dead animal and a gun. His discomfort morphs into worry, and he rushes back to the car, eager to get away from those people. It is precisely this haste that makes him nervous and causes a small accident by bumping into the brute's car. Nadia becomes frightened, but David insists that the dent is very discreet and they won't even notice it. Arriving at the lodge where they will stay, the couple faces another unpleasant encounter, as the receptionist ignores them and walks away without explanation. A man named Einar appears next, explaining that Mona is a bit suspicious of outsiders, but swears it has nothing to do with Nadia's skin color. Ignoring this comment, David shows the reservation confirmation and confirms that they will be staying for 3 nights in total. This does not include the night following, as they plan to camp under the northern lights. Einar retorts that the phenomenon does not always happen and insists on scaring the visitors with warnings about the necessity of staying together, as the cold there is no joke. Little does he know that David is already terrified, but for a different reason. Rolla and Jarmo are at the same lodge, sitting at one of the bar tables. Einar hands over the room keys and mentions that there is a cabin further north for tired trail visitors. The first night is quiet, but Nadia and David are startled again when they go out early in the morning. Their car has been scratched on the side and someone has written a racist insult over a sticker. This leaves Nadia upset with David, as she says none of this would have happened if he had talked to those men at the gas station instead of slipping away. Despite this, she is much angrier at the other two and even makes David stop when she spots their pickup truck. He is afraid to provoke such people but cannot stop his fiancée, and she approaches with a screwdriver. Rolla appears just as she is scratching his pickup and asks why she is doing that. Nadia shouts an insult and rushes back to the car when she sees Rolla just release the dog. David steps on the gas as soon as she gets in, and Jarmo comes to see what happened, sporting the same confused and surprised expression. The couple heads to the point indicated by Einar on the map and finally starts to enjoy the vastness of the snow, setting up their tent in a spot well away from the road. At night, they are treated to an excellent view of the night sky show, and Nadia takes advantage of this moment of peace for a serious conversation. She tells David about the baby, and he is very surprised but seems happy with the news and willing to start a family. It is then that Nadia suddenly stands up, frightened by a red dot that has appeared in the middle of the tent. Boris starts making noise and they both try to make him stop, wanting to hear who might be outside. Irritated, Nadia begins putting on her boots and says it must just be some kid with a laser pointer. She and David exit the tent and start calling, receiving no response. Now the red dot is in the snow right in front of them, clearly targeting the couple. They continue insisting it must be a prank, but David becomes anxious as he sees the dot on Nadia's back and rushes to get her out of the line of sight, whatever it is. The mysterious prankster does not give up and points the laser right at her belly. Growing more alarmed, David jumps in front of Nadia and even knocks her to the ground. They both start cursing the unknown person, shouting for them to stop bothering them, and David thinks it is best to camp elsewhere. As they pack their things, the dot reappears in the tent and suddenly goes out. Shortly afterward, someone whistles and Boris immediately responds, running outside and disappearing into the darkness. Nadia and David call him back and watch, almost breathless with fear. Then they jump in shock and terror when they hear a gunshot. David calls for the dog several times, but the barking has completely ceased. The second shot shatters the lantern inside the tent, sending them into a panic. They leave everything behind and run through the snow while the shots continue. The only cover is the darkness, and they lose even that when a flare is shot, illuminating everything around. On the horizon, they see a vehicle approaching and run to a wooded area where there is minimal cover. Crouched down, they catch their breath and listen, noticing that there are two vehicles. Hearing a barking sound, Nadia almost gets up to look for Boris, and David does not let her risk it, but he also becomes agitated when the barking turns into whimpering. As the sound of the cars comes closer, the couple carefully changes hiding spots and manages to reach an empty cabin where they can at least take shelter. Even so, the cold is cruel, and only a tight embrace prevents them from freezing throughout the night. As soon as dawn breaks, they carefully exit and walk toward the tent. When they get close, David suggests that Nadia wait at a certain distance, and she huddles in the snow, watching. He goes around the tent and lets out a scream, quickly coming back out to recover from what he saw. Concerned, Nadia approaches him and sees that there are bloodstains on the ground. All of their things have been taken, and in their place, they find the head of poor Boris. Nadia becomes enraged upon seeing this and starts shouting everywhere, cursing the cowards who attacked her dog, but David urges her to calm down, as they still need to get out of this mess. Hoping to at least find the car keys, David swallows his nausea and re-enters the tent again. However, as he gropes around on the ground, his arm gets caught in a bear trap that activates as soon as he touches it. Nadia is startled by his screams and helps free him, doing what she can to stop the bleeding and reminding him that she is not a doctor yet. Both are increasingly shocked by this vile revenge over a mere dent in the car. Giving up on the keys, they try to find someone who can help them, but the first figure they see in the distance starts shooting at them at the first opportunity. They quickly duck down and try to crawl behind the sparse vegetation, but it becomes evident that they are even more exposed than yesterday. Then David mentions that he saw Rolu's gun, and it is the same as the one from the video game he plays. That means it needs to be reloaded after each shot, and that takes 10 seconds. As soon as they hear the next shot, they take advantage of that interval to run toward the woods, but David trips on the way. Weakened because of his arm, he begins to have visions of a figure staring at him through the fog. While he regains his composure, Nadia hears a strange sound of something breaking and fills with dread when she realizes it is the ice under her feet. In her rush to escape the shooter, she did not even notice she was running across a huge frozen lake. Now, she lies as flat as possible and yells a warning to David, who cannot hear her. We see that he is only a few meters from his fiancée when the ice gives way and he falls into the lake. Nadia despairs when she sees that he is submerged and crawls to the hole, but he seems to have already sunk by the time she arrives. In tears, she regains hope when she sees bubbles at the surface and thankfully finds him alive. After pulling him out and warming him up a bit, she helps him walk to one of the emergency cabins. From there, they contact the mountain patrol, which promises to send rescue as soon as the weather improves. Nadia then tends to David, and they both take advantage of the moment of peace to listen to the baby's heartbeat. They sleep wearing multiple layers of clothing and wake up in the morning to a terrible surprise. The rescue does arrive, but the person sent is Jarmo, and he is armed. Hoping he does not know who called, The couple flees out the window before he can enter the cabin, and they find themselves in the woods once again. They crawl into what seems to be a burrow without checking if it is empty, and soon realize it is not. Now Jarmo is there too, and the couple finds themselves trapped between two kinds of predators. Nadia then fires a flare she took from the cabin and hits Jarmo, who falls back with his clothes on fire. The animal in the burrow is already growling when she and David escape as quickly as possible. However, now they are lost in the woods, very hungry, freezing, and without hope of getting help. Moreover, David is suffering from sudden collapses and begins to talk about someone who is stuck in his mind. Then Nadia remembers the map Einar showed and sees that his cabin is not far from there. Indeed, the little house soon appears in the distance as they continue. But David's episodes are worsening rapidly, and now we see that the figure haunting him is a little boy. He cries, saying he does not deserve to be a father, and claims that all this is a divine sign. Nadia begs him not to talk like that, and points out that the cabin is very close now, trying to make him walk there. However, he collapses face first into the snow again, and she decides to go ahead to get help. Just before reaching it, she hears the rumbling of an engine and chooses to hide to see who is coming. Unfortunately for her, Rolly emerges right behind her at that moment. He is armed, but does not point his rifle at her, and seems very puzzled by her fearful reaction, as if he has no idea what she has been through. However, before he can talk, David attacks him from behind and strikes him in the head with a rock. Realizing that the guy is probably dead, he starts having tremors again and begins to babble explanations, saying he had to act that way because Rolla was about to shoot Nadia. She helps him get into the deceased's vehicle, and soon they reach Einar's cabin, hoping that the nightmare has finally ended. However, David still needs urgent medical attention, and so Nadia asks Einar to call an ambulance. She begins to comfort David, telling him that everything will be all right, but then starts to find Einar's conversation on the phone strange. He starts saying, "Hi, it's me," and it does not seem like he is speaking to emergency services. Then he informs that he already has the two of them and asks them to hurry. His voice is choked as he hangs up, and he becomes alarmed at Nadia's suspicious expression, as it is evident that she has noticed something wrong. Nevertheless, he tries to maintain the facade and claims that the ambulance is already on its way. Nadia does not believe him and tries to carry David, who does not understand what is happening. Einar then gives up pretending and threatens them with a knife, saying that all of this will be over soon. Shocked by this twist, the couple locks themselves in one of the rooms, and David makes an even more disturbing discovery. One of the walls is covered with photographs of the two in various locations, and on top of that, there is a portrait of that boy who appeared in David's hallucinations. Just when they think they are unraveling the mystery, the last piece reveals itself. Thomas, the kind neighbor, enters the room with a rifle and says that the boy was his son. In a flashback, we see Nadia and David on the road shortly after graduation. The two are so excited to enjoy their life together that they start right inside the car. That is why David does not see the child in time to swerve. The boy goes flying with the impact, and Nadia runs to check his condition, horrified to find that he did not survive. Returning to the car, she is shocked when David starts driving away and says they need to call the police. He agrees but claims it is better to think calmly, getting away from the crime scene before anyone arrives. This temporary decision drags on, and they are already in the middle of a move without telling anyone. Nadia is consumed by guilt and dials the police number several times, but David stops her from confessing. Making emotional blackmail, he says it was him behind the wheel, and that calling means sending him to prison. In tears, Nadia responds that she is at least complicit and even goes so far as to make the call, but hangs up again upon seeing David's despairing expression. He swears he will turn himself in personally and just needs more time to gather courage. Of course, none of this actually happens, and that is how the couple finds themselves in the nightmare they are living now. When Tomas begins to speak, we see another flashback, but now from his point of view. Tomas and his son were playing with a drone that terrible day, and the boy wandered off to observe better, not paying attention to the traffic. From a distance, Tomas sees that his son is standing in the middle of the road and runs desperately to him, arriving too late to prevent the tragedy. The car is already far away, but that does not mean the driver has escaped forever since the drone recorded everything from above. It is hard for Tomas to watch the hit and run, but the sacrifice pays off when a nice zoom reveals the car's license plate clearly, and a quick search gives him David's address. However, when the police ask Tomas if he has any leads to help find the culprit, he says no. His family was destroyed by a couple of irresponsible young people who did not even bother to provide assistance, and therefore, prison is a light punishment. Obsessed with revenge, Tomas begins to follow David and Nadia everywhere, taking pictures and learning everything about the couple. Then he moves into the apartment across from them and befriends the two, pretending to be a nice neighbor while waiting for the right moment to act. Upon learning about the couple's fight, Tomas gifts David the trip to Bear Valley, already having planned everything he would do with them there. Back to the present, David promises to turn himself in to the police, and Nadia tries to appeal to Tomas's paternal instincts, reminding him that she is pregnant. Without listening to them, he suddenly strikes Nadia to knock her unconscious while they wait for someone to arrive. Einar is already losing his courage when she regains consciousness and finds herself tied to a chair. David is in front of her with a drill and under Tomas's aim. Clearly, they are going to do something horrific, and they have not started yet because they are still waiting for a third person. Einar is already losing his nerve and suggests they stop there, but Tomas ignores him. Tired of waiting, he points the red dot at David and orders him to use the drill on Nadia's belly. The two are shocked by the cruelty of the punishment, but Tomas shoots David in the leg to show he is serious. He says that Nadia has a chance to survive and promises to set them free if David obeys. Otherwise, he will kill both of them right there, starting with Nadia. David turns on the drill and starts moving it toward his fiancée's belly, but he cannot harm her. Finding this ending boring, Tomas is aiming for Nadia when someone arrives, but it's not who he expected. The visitor is poor Jarmo, who, like his brother, has nothing to do with the attacks on the couple, and now thinks they are psychopaths. That is why both always reacted with surprise to so much hostility. And now, Jarmo is convinced they are indeed psychopaths. He orders Einar to call the police, but soon realizes the abnormal situation around. Tomas shoots the intruder, and his gun also fires, hitting Einar. Jarmo remains alive and threatens to shoot Tomas, who lunges at him. David takes advantage of the confusion to free Nadia, and the two run out of the cabin, but cannot use the vehicle. Without the strength to run, he admits that all of this is his fault and tells Nadia to save herself. When Tomas exits the cabin, she is already far away, running through the woods until she stumbles upon Rola's body, which is lying next to his gun. Tomas tries to force David to reveal where Nadia is, and he only replies that she is not to blame, but is startled when he hears her voice next. With Rola's gun, she makes Tomas lower his own, suspicious of his strange smile. Then Nadia is suddenly shot in the forehead, to David's horror, and the shooter comes out from behind the trees. The missing person is Mona, Tomas's wife and Einar's sister. David has already accepted his fate now, but that is precisely why Tomas decides to change it, as a single shot would only serve to end his suffering. He and Mona leave, letting David live with guilt for the rest of his life.